Okay. Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Climate, a series of conversations about all things climate change. This first one will be focused on energy efficiency, renewable usage, the power grid, and some options that you have that you may not have even known about. I'm Ashley Diaz, the Sustainability Planner for Bowie. I've been here for about 5 years and I run the green programs, the Green Bowie social media, green events, the sustainability plan, and the climate action plan. And during COVID, I began looking for new ways to reach out to residents, and that began with the sustainability webinar series, which was great and is archived on the city webpage and the city YouTube channel. But now I want to try for a more interactive experience and host a few conversational sessions. So I have here with me today Steve Wehrenberg, who was formerly the chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, and he hosted a few of the webinars himself. And Steve, you're so much more than just the former chair of the EAC. I personally get to call you a friend and a mentor. You've got 47 or so years in the Coast Guard under your belt, a PhD in psychology, and you are basically tapped into all things change making and progress. So you could tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself if you like, and then maybe how you stepped into the environmental realm before we jump into your next few slides.
Well, sure, Ashley. Thank you for that sterling introduction. I have 47 years with the Coast Guard, and my last job was in strategy development and forecasting, and a lot of that was related to environmental issues, given the threat that we seem to be facing. I also founded an energy consensus nonprofit in Washington, and we had a lengthy, I guess it was about 3 years worth of speaker series, and that speaker series was designed to help educate policymakers in the Washington area. We were always surprised to find that there were people from the public sector, the private sector, the nonprofit NGO sector, and even energy people in the room at the same time. Our goal was to have conversation, and that's exactly what we're trying to do here today. Last but not least, I founded the Association of Change Management Professionals and have some insights about how to make change and how to help people change. So that's me.
Yep.
And
so let's start with this. Let's set the scene, because I know this topic is very near and dear to your heart. How does leading by example, say the city or even industry, any government entity, how does them leading by example encourage others to make changes? And why is that so important?
Well, you use the term leading by example. I would say that the city needs to model the behaviors that we need. And I think we're saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. Looking at the climate action plan, for example, the city has done a tremendous amount of good with respect to the climate and with respect to energy in particular. I think Ashley is going to mention some of the good things the city has done, but I concluded when I was the chair of the EAC that it seemed to me that we were going to hit a ceiling pretty soon, because the city could only do so many things. We've got EV charging stations. People are buying EVs for the city's fleet. We have a big solar farm down off of 214, and a lot of I think Ashley's sitting in a LEED Gold City Hall, which means that it meets the standards for the most energy efficient building that you can have. And there are a lot of buildings that are city owned that have solar panels on the roof. So the city's done a lot, but the city can only do so much. The long pole in the tent right now is 60,000 residents and 20,000 households. It's going to be very difficult for Bowie to achieve the goals that are set out in the climate action plan without the full engagement of the residents. So that's kind of why we're doing this and where we started. And this is kind of the background for why we're going the direction we're going. We realized, and this is straight out of the climate action plan and a presentation that we gave to the city council when we launched the climate action plan. There's state, if we want the citizens of Bowie to be engaged, there are certain steps that we're going to have to take to do it. One is, of course, to be able to communicate with residents, period. So we're working diligently to try to figure out how to do that. And this is at least a small example of some of the things we need to do. Obviously, one has to be aware of both the current state and a potential future state, which means that, do we have a problem? And if we have a problem, what is it? So we'll spend a little time here today looking at both the current state and perhaps a better future state. If you understand those two things, then you can make a choice about whether you're going to, shoot for that future state or whether you're going to stick with the status quo. That's the second thing the city needs to do is I would say, create desire. In other words, why would a future state be better, and what incentives can the city offer to make to cause residents to want to do some of the things that are necessary to make a better future state. And then, of course, it's just a matter of, okay, how can we achieve it? Ability, what kind of supports are needed to make it easier to do the right things, and that would be where the incentives lie. And we'll talk about some of those today. And then rewarding people and reinforcing the behaviors that need to exist if we're going to do it. So the bottom line, yes, ma'am.
I think your ADCAR slide is not actually up. I think you wanted to have that up.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's interesting because it says here that I'm screen sharing. So here we go.
You see it on your.
Okay, hold on a minute. Let me just get out of full screen for a minute. I'll stop sharing. Take a look and see what the heck is going on. Now? No, not now. But
there we go.
wow.
So that's what you were just going through.
Let me see if I can go backwards now. Can I go backwards? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Forward. Okay, now we got it.
Cool. Did you have anything else to say about ADCAR? Are you okay if we?
No, but this is, well, I will say one other thing, and that is this is the approach that the city plans to use or is using to try to achieve the goals of the climate action plan.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's go 10,000 foot view. Let's jump in. Our grid system, our grid makeup. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you're kind of the pro about that. And a lot of people really aren't aware. So a little bit about our grid makeup, and then you can go into some of the options that residents have for tapping into renewables.
Absolutely. Let me first start by saying that this current state, future state is pretty important. The future state, the current state, as we have begun to see, is that things are not going well. As a matter of fact, today, if you check out most of the news that's popping up today, other than the fact that there's something going on in Ukraine, there's a lot going on with regard to the climate. And today there was a report that that says that global warming is having a much greater effect on health, both physical and mental health, than we had realized. Also, if we get a foot of water, which the UN IPCC just launched a report about, at a foot of water, I think Annapolis is going to flood not once every 2 weeks like it does today, but every day. And that would mean that there's a fair amount of water, not only in the Annapolis harbor, but in Baltimore's inner harbor as well. So there's a lot of bad stuff going on. News about wildfires and how they're getting worse and more frequent, and because of warming, there's less cooling in at night. And as a result, they're starting to see night fires, which is, fires starting at night, which is not something that's been the case in the past. So there is a current state that has some problems associated with it. Most of it, we certainly would agree today, is caused by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are causing this warming. And so obviously we need to do something to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And that means that not just what the federal government can do, or even what the state government can do, but local governments, such as city and town governments, have to do things, because the bottom line is that people have to, figure out how to do something different if we're going to solve this problem. The solutions that we propose here today, or that I'll propose here today, are the ones that probably are the easiest and most impactful. So that it's a good thing. So we need a better future state with less greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. One of the things we can do is to, now this is not necessarily common knowledge, but we are, most of us are BG&E, and some of us are Pepco. Those are actually the same company, but that's another story altogether. There are two parts of your electricity in your home. One is the delivery of electricity to you, and BG&E or Pepco do that. Generally speaking, BG&E buys energy from lots of places. Now, it turns out that the state of Maryland has taken a big step a few years ago, and said, you know what, people need to have choices about who their energy providers are going to be. And as a matter of fact, we all have that today, and that's one of the things I'm going to demonstrate. But that's electricity supply, and that is a highly competitive market. Now, the really interesting thing about this is that if you decide that you're going to change your supplier, and I know that everybody's gotten phone calls from various energy providers, people knock on the door and all that sort of thing. There are better ways to approach that, and that's to do a little bit of background research in the Maryland Energy Choice Program, so that you know exactly what your rights are, and you know what's being offered. And that's what we'll go into today. So bottom line is, you get to choose your supplier. That now,
and then BG&E just delivers it.
That's right. But just to be clear, I've chosen a supplier that provides all wind energy. And that doesn't mean that I have a windmill in my backyard. It also doesn't, and windmill's not the right term, it's wind turbines these days. But it does mean that BG&E has to buy electricity from somebody who supplies electricity via wind. So that's kind of the way it works. And let me explain that a little bit. All of Gaul is divided into three parts. No, all of the country is divided into a lot of different collectives. We are in the PJM collective. That stands for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland. You can see it's actually much bigger than that. All that in the tan color there is
our grid,
our consortium, and all the suppliers in that grid feed the electricity into the same grid. So if for example, we make a choice to buy wind energy, or I make a choice to buy wind energy, then in usually somewhere like Virginia or West Virginia, or even Pennsylvania, there are a lot of providers and suppliers who provide wind power from there. So they feed that into the grid.
Yeah.
And what the bottom line is, think about it for a minute, if everybody chose renewable energy, then BG&E would have to buy renewable energy from somebody who supplies it.
Yes.
And that means that the suppliers would have to grow, and that means that would reduce the use of oil, coal, and so on for the energy that you get in your home. So this PJM business is kind of interesting. let me, this is a little complicated, but I'll simplify it pretty quickly. If you look at the column, this is provided by one of the companies. It happens to be the company that I'm using, but I'm not a shill for that by any means. Matter of fact, I'm about to switch because there are some that are less expensive today. At some point, this was the only alternative or one of the few alternatives available, and that's the one I jumped on. The mix of energy that is the PJM system mix, which is the sort of the default, as you can see, is 22% coal, 38% natural gas, 33% nuclear, 2% oil, and very little renewable energy, 6.2%. That's the standard mix. So if you just go straight to BG&E and sign up for electricity, that's what you get. That's what's being provided to you. And that's,
You are one of the 6.2%, forcing them.
well,
asking
actually,
them.
it's yeah, exactly. But it's more complicated than that, because let's just go with yes. Yes, that's probably a good way to think of it. This particular vendor supplier has 3 different programs that make use of renewable energy. There's a sort of, if you're you know, feeling kind of tepid and not confident about what's going on, you can choose, oh, I would like to get my energy as 5% wind power, and then the rest the PJM mix, or the 50% option. I want 50% of my electricity provided by wind, and the rest will be the PJM system mix. This vendor also has a 100% wind, which was the choice that I made. It's a few pennies more expensive per kilowatt hour, but that's hardly, I mean, that's more than offset by the fact that if you look way over here on the right-hand side of this, the PJM system mix produces at a, I think they're using,
Pounds.
yeah, but is it, I think they're using a 700, yeah, I think they're using a 700 kilowatt hour. So the mix for us in the PJM system mix is 842 pounds of carbon dioxide it's per kilowatt hour. As you can see, the 5% wind reduces out a little bit, 50% wind reduces out a little bit more, and the 100% wind option actually has produces no carbon dioxide, no emissions from fossil fuels. Well, I mean, obviously, if you want to do something really good for the environment and you're committed to helping the city reduce the greenhouse gas in its footprint, not just in the city as a municipality, but the footprint itself of Bowie, then you choose the big guy. So that's kind of the way, pardon me, that's kind of the way it works.
Can you show us?
I will indeed do exactly that. What a nice segue. Thank you. I appreciate that. What I'm going to do is stop sharing for just a moment and switch screens. And I'm going to go to the live MarylandEnergyChoice.com site and demonstrate, show you step by step how you might be able to take advantage of this option that the state of Maryland has provided. So bear with me for just a moment while I do some keystroking. This one, I don't think I'm going to be able to go to full screen, or not that it's going to matter, but okay. Now, what are we looking at? Can everybody see something that says Maryland Energy Choice?
Yes,
the choice
sir.
is yours. And
Yep.
if let me just make sure that, okay. So what I'm going to do is walk through how one would go about doing this and making a choice. This is the main site, mdenergychoice.com. This is where you can not just shop for electricity, but you can also shop for natural gas alternative choices. Now, with natural gas, it's not quite the same deal. With natural gas, you're buying what's called renewable energy credits, because if you're using natural gas, you're using natural gas. But it can be provided by vendors who offset the use of that by planting trees or doing other kinds of things. But we're going to stick with electricity for this one. Everybody in Maryland has the capability to shop for electricity, and we will now go shopping. You have lots of choices, and so the next page where you're sort of doing the shopping there's a lot of information. I would encourage everybody to take a look at all this, because it tells you exactly how it works, what your rights are, what the responsibilities of the providers are, and so on. Let's just take a quick look at how it works so you can get a sense for what's available to you. How it works. It works this way. The utility customer agrees on a contract, and the contract can be month to month. That's the way you want to work, or it can be years, and you can lock in a fixed price for years. If you're nervous about energy the way I am, you're going to want a fixed price for as long as you can have it. But that's your choice. That's everybody's choice. The energy supplier, the electricity supplier, can't switch service without your permission, so it's a very interactive kind of thing. And people who are beating on your door who are trying to get you to switch, sometimes you must recognize that some of those tactics are, shall we say, of low ethic. So you don't have to worry about that. You can make all your decisions through this portal and not have to endure sales pitches. Let me go to the benefits of choice. Are quite straightforward. I won't go into them in detail, but it could potentially lower your electricity rate. It might be a little more expensive too, by cents, if you want to take some of the best possible options. Renewable energy is one of the things that is offered by most of the providers in one form or another, and there are often promotion incentives for changing from the PJM mix that is the default for BG&E to one of these other suppliers of choice. So those are all, and you can get deeper into each of these if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's pretty user friendly.
It is. And there are also questions that you might want to ask, or that you might want to research a little bit. If you're choosing an energy supplier, what are the kinds of things you need to know? Well, these are the kinds of things that you would want to make sure you understood. What's going to be the price for a kilowatt hour? What does that include? Is there what are the options that are available to me, and so on. And make sure that you have available to you all the terms and conditions that are associated with anything, because in essence you're signing whether you know it or not, you have signed a contract with BG&E to provide your electrical service. What you're doing is changing that electrical the energy provision itself, so you're striking a separate contract with the energy provider. BG&E still bills you. This is on your bill. I will show you that in a few minutes. And they're in charge of distributing it to you. And because they own all the electrical lines, so it only makes sense.
Did you want to show in the shop now section some of the filters?
Absolutely, and that's my next step. Here, obviously, there are lots of other things that you can do. And these are the questions that you could ask and have answered if you were really curious about it. And I encourage everybody to take a look at these, because those are pretty important.
Yeah.
Knowing your rights is pretty important as well. So, but in the meantime, let's go shopping.
I think it's up at the top. Yeah.
Nope. Shop for a supplier. We're going to take a look at all suppliers. We're going to start there. Oh, we're not going to start there. We're going to shop. Okay. So what you're going to want to do is compare offers, because there are probably over 100 different organizations and vendors now that are providing this energy. So what's your utility? And we'll pick BG&E. I'm going to use my own case here because it's the one I know the best. I'm going to say that we'll use a nice round number, 1,000 kilowatt hours per
Which
month.
pretty on par for most residents in the city of Bowie.
Pretty close to the average.
Yeah.
I've got more stuff,
Maybe
but
a
then
little
I've
high.
done a lot of energy efficiency things as well. So,
Yeah.
and then there are some providers that won't provide it unless you can't contract with them unless you have a certain amount of electricity. In other words, if you use very little electricity, many of these providers are not going to be particularly interested in striking a contract with you. So you have to figure out that, they have to make a profit as well. So although they're tremendously regulated. So this is where we stand this is where I stand right now. Let me see. Yeah. So here we are. My utility company is BG&E, as is most of the watchers, users here. I'm going to use that 1,000. And you can see that the price that BG&E gets from the PJM mix is about 8 cents, a little over 8 cents per kilowatt hour, which is not a lot by any means. And that's, at 1,000, that's $82 a month or $83 a month. Now, the way it shows up on your bill is this is one part of your bill. And if you look at your BG&E bill, you can see that there's a cost for the energy supply, and then there's a cost for distribution. And they're listed separately on your bill. Now, all that would change if you chose another provider would be that provider would be listed there instead of the BG&E PJM mix. But let's take a look at some of the plans that are available. You can get variable price, fixed price, or unlimited. I'm not exactly sure what unlimited means because I'm scared to know. But the fixed price and variable price is pretty straightforward. If you think that if you want to try it out, variable price might be right, because then you could find yourself having like a month-long service, and if you decide for some reason you don't like it, you could quit that and go back to the PJM mix pretty readily. Variable price is, nowadays is kind of dicey because energy costs are not going down. You might have noticed that. As a matter of fact, if I look on Nextdoor, I see people saying, "Oh, my electric bill was $1 bazillion. What's going on here?"
But even if you weren't sure what types of filters you wanted over there on the left, if you scroll, you have options just from tapping into Shop Now. You have all these options
right.
down here under, right? If
That's
people aren't
exactly
sure.
right. So without selecting anything, what you're in essence is seeing all the providers that will work at 1,000 kilowatt hours a month.
And that's where you're going to get the.
It's a bazillion of them. Many of them are less expensive than the PJM price. For example, the first one you see, these are ordered by or sorted by price. But you can see that, let me see, what is their price? Oh, contact supplier for pricing.
Yeah, but I saw some down there that were about, yeah.
There's one that's listed. Now that's because they're in the market, and they're gonna start you off at some market rate. But generally speaking, there are a half a dozen or so that are less expensive than the PJM mix, and some that are more expensive than the PJM mix.
And if you click renewables in the left-hand thing.
Yep.
Can we do renewables and then see like the amount of options that come up, or whatever
Exactly. Let me
filters
start here, and I'll just select. I'm going to select fixed price because I would rather lock in a price for a while and go with the variability of the market. It would be nice if there was some kind of an incentive offered, but I'm not going to worry about that right now.
We just want to show.
I'm going to choose, just for the sake of showing, a 6-month term, which is renewable. And I would prefer that there not be an extra monthly fee for this. Some vendors offer power, but then they, tack a couple of monthly fees on it that raises the overall rate. So I'm going to say no monthly fee, thank you. And some vendors also have what they call a cancellation fee, which is if you want to cancel the contract, it's going to cost you something to do that. I'm going to select no for that as well, because it turns out there are plenty of vendors who don't have that, who don't have those caveats. So, and here we are with the vendors meeting, I think, the qualifications that I've chosen, except a couple of them are even a shorter term than, which means that they're offering this price for this length of time. If you want to continue doing it, they might offer a different price. So I'm a little concerned about those. I would want to stick with somebody that's offering what they say. Now you can see that at this rate, if you go for 12 months, that's a little more expensive than the PJM mix, or actually considerably more expensive than PJM mix. But when you think about it, it goes from a little over 8 cents per kilowatt hour to almost 11 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, the difference between $83 and $108 is not trivial, but again, we're going with that's
also based off of your assumed kilowatt hour usage. So it's an incentive in itself to reduce energy usage and reduce the amount of kilowatt hours spent.
Absolutely right. And this one is only a 100% renewable choice. So, and that's the most expensive, of course, for all of the.
It's only 2 cents more per kilowatt hour, which in the scheme of things,
Right.
For the sake of time, can you show us your bill? I know you have that because that's also very helpful.
Absolutely.
Sorry to kind of throw that at
you.
No,
that's okay. But just let me close it out by saying that at this point, you would contact the supplier, you'd get all the specifics for their contract. And then at the end of that, you'd have a, make your choice sign here, and we've got a contract. So, and the only thing that changes then is that you're getting your energy from a renewable source. The bill is exactly the same kind of bill that you're getting today. And let me again stop sharing and go back to that. And we'll go here, which is kind of where we left off. And I will share the screen from where I am. And that's where we just left. And this is my bill.
Can't see it.
Can't see it. Okay, then we'll figure out why that's the case.
There we go.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
That's
well,
weird.
It's still in the PowerPoint setup, but I can see your bill.
Still in the PowerPoint setup, huh? Okay, hold on a second. How's that?
Yes.
It takes a while to get used to this stuff. I don't care what anybody tells you. So this is my electric bill. You can see I'm right at the near the average. And if you look down here, it's your electric supply for me is WGL Energy Services, and that's the 100% wind power. It's $111 a month versus what would be $85 or so a month if I did it from BG&E. BG&E still delivers it to me. So they're in charge of distribution and delivery. And your bill right now, if you don't have an alternative supplier, this is the PJM mix that you're looking at, and that would be the cost for the PJM mix. So, and then of course, all the taxes and fees and surcharges and everything that go along with no matter who you choose.
Yeah.
Which is hardly a big deal, but nonetheless, there it is. This outlines the energy supplier charges. And it's the rate that I'm paying for that. And this is how to get a hold of your supplier if you need to, but I've never needed to, nor do I particularly feel a strong need to talk to them.
Yeah, so it's Super user friendly, easy. It's not really that scary. I mean, your bill looks like what most of us are used to. So,
Absolutely.
and like you said in the beginning, it's a great step for residents to take
It is.
if they feel called to that, to help, the whole picture.
It is the easiest way to make a big difference.
Yeah.
You could, now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against this by any means, but you could put solar panels on your house and you could have net metering and you might be able to save some money that way. But then there are a whole host of things that go along with that. In addition to the fact that you've got these things on your roof, which is a good thing, nothing wrong with that, but it's
have
a
options.
more interaction with the homeowner than would otherwise be the case. You're looking right now at the interaction.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about anything.
Well,
PG&E is buying it for you.
yeah. Speaking of houses, you recently did a few presentations on sustainability for the sustainability webinars and defossilizing your homestead. Can you expand on some of the options that you gave there that I know you do at your house as well? Just some options for residents to get away from fossil fuels and move towards electric usage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll preface that by saying that I just ran into a new book that was published. The title is Electrify. I don't think it's available yet, but the title's Electrify. And the premise is that if you, pardon the ringing, it'll go away, I'm sure. If you use renewable energy, then it makes sense to electrify everything in your home. If you don't use renewable energy, like most of the people in Bowie are today, if you don't use renewable, using the PJM mix, that means that the only way you can make a difference is by being efficient, which means that you need to do all the things that are necessary to be efficient, and that reduces the use of fossil fuels at the other end somewhat. This option means that, pardon me, this option, for example, of 100% wind power means in essence that everything in your house can and should be electrified. And we'll send out these resources, but this is a great description of how you can, ditch it all. And I'll give you some examples of some of the things that I've done and some of the things that I plan to do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, go out. I have, 2 air conditioners that use electrical power, but I also use natural gas for heat.
Yeah.
When the time comes to replace that, I will be replacing it with a heat pump and electric heating, mainly because I can. And I am taking that much out of the fossil fuel produced greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere just by electrifying something more. If you don't go with renewable energy, then all you're really doing is, if you buy an electric, water heater instead of a gas water heater, all you're doing is changing it a little bit from all gas to some coal, some gas, some, the kinds of stuff that we saw in the PJM mix.
Yeah.
So this is a good site, and we'll give everybody a link to this when time goes by. But so here are some of the kinds of things that, this is what it might mean to you. There are electric lawnmowers. There are electric lawnmowers that you can plug in. There are electric lawnmowers that work on batteries. The prices are going down dramatically just because more and more people are choosing them. And I might add that, as Ashley will mention, the city offers a rebate for, or will soon offer a rebate for electrifying your lawnmower. Right now it's for mulching mowers, but I think there is a proposal in the budget for electrifying other things as well. There are battery powered or electric powered leaf blowers, the string trimmers, the hedge clippers, the chainsaws, and most of the companies that you would buy these things from offer all of these using the same battery.
Yep.
Which I think is kind of fascinating, and it's fascinating for me anyway. For example, I use, I think it's Ryobi or something, whoever it might be, but the same battery operates all the outside stuff, the string trimmer, the leaf blower, the lawnmower, a hedge clipper. I've got plug-in chainsaws just because I have. But for the most part, all of these others are rechargeable batteries, and it uses the same battery. So
You never have to keep a spare tank of oil in your shed or garage. It's awesome.
my shed no longer smells like gasoline.
Yep, it's awesome.
It has always smelled like gasoline in the past, but it doesn't smell like gasoline now. And
Same.
here's the other, I mean, think about this for a minute. All of these things, if you've made the choice, are wind operated. You know, these are all essentially driven by or powered by wind power.
For you, yeah, as you
me.
charge their batteries, your electric is being supplied via a wind offset. So yeah, it's just full circle for you, which is great.
Exactly.
Maureen, we're going to take questions at the end. We need to continue on, but we will get to you at the end.
Here are some other things you might want to consider. You can buy nowadays. You can buy electric grills for grilling your ribs. You can buy electric fire pits or alcohol-fueled fire pits that pollute less than natural gas, which is what you're probably using now if you have one of these things. But if you look at this, and of course, there are some pretty exotic things too. There are battery-operated snow blowers.
Yeah,
power washers. And all of these things in this block up here are things that can be electrified. You know, if you have a gas stove, you can buy an electric stove. Gas water heater, you can buy an electric water heater.
Yeah.
Washer, dryer, air conditioners, EVs, of course, electric vehicles. And I have bought an electric vehicle a couple of years ago, and I'm proud to say that my car is wind powered.
Yep.
That's an interesting notion when you think about it. When my natural gas water heater dies, which I've been anticipating for a couple of years now, since it's an old one, I will replace it with an electric water heater, probably a tankless one because that's the most efficient. A ton of other things that you can electrify. If you got a hot tub, you can heat it with electricity instead of gas. Sauna. There are electric fireplaces that look like gas fireplaces.
Yeah, which I just bought. I just bought one.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see that. That's I've been thinking that's going to be a good idea. So
yeah. For the sake of time, can I switch gears?
Yep.
Thank you for showing all of this. These are all fascinating examples, and to kind of play off of that, what the city can do to help support residents on this journey is a few things. First, we offer.
Just stop sharing so that we can do that. Okay.
Okay.
It's all yours.
Thank you. We offer energy audits. I should note for this year they are filled, but it will be open again starting July 1 for the next year. We offer it to the first 50 households. So when you put in your application on the Green Bowie website, it comes to me and we get you set up with a contractor, and they come out and they do an audit on your home. And it's basically provides you a menu of actions that you can take, things that are small like LEDs and low flow shower heads and faucets, and they can tighten up things all the way up to HVACs and appliances and weatherization and ventilation, and all of these things that you can take that and you can do with it what you're able. Some things are small investments, some things are larger investments. You might need to save it for later kind of thing. But you have the opportunity to see what you can do for both energy efficiency, air quality, safety even, so it's a really cool program. So if I'll send out the links in a follow-up email, but at the City of Bowie website on the Green Bowie page, you can find more information. We also have a food waste program that's in a limited amount of neighborhoods, but it is there. And so we'll talk about methane in just a few minutes, but it helps offset methane emissions. We do LED events where if you bring old light bulbs, you can give them to me and I'll give you an LED so you can work on energy efficiency at home. And like Steve said, we currently have lawnmower rebates for mulching and electric mowers now. It may expand, so stay tuned after this budget session to see where it goes. And bringing it full circle back to the whole ADCAR model, the city is doing things to be a leader. We have our climate action plan that was approved by council, and that runs 2020 to 2025. And we have an implementation plan for it that will be out for public comment very soon. So also look for that. We have a sustainability plan as well. And in terms of city operations, we recently signed a power purchase agreement on a 2.5 megawatt solar array, which will help offset, emissions from some of our main facilities. And we're in the process of working through another PPA, perhaps for more arrays or more panels. So stay tuned for that as well. So we may be on the road to net zero operations as a city. And in terms of EVs, because you mentioned EVs, we recently entered into an agreement with BG&E, and we now have public chargers at both City Hall and Ken Hill Center. So they're public chargers, they're open 24/7. You can use them, and you would do it just like you would if you have an EV any other station. Use your app, use your card or whatever it is that you typically do. You're able to do that here at City Hall and Ken Hill Center. And hopefully we'll have more of those coming in the near future at parks and things like that. Did you want to add anything before I turn it over to some of these questions that were submitted by residents, Steve?
Yeah, I will add one thing, and that is that the city council approved the climate action plan unanimously a while back. And they also committed, both with the climate action plan and some other resolutions, that the city of Bowie will reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 50% from, I think, from what year?
2015.
2015, from the 2015 level by 2030. So that means that we got to get hot, or not hot. I guess that would be better. We got to cool things off a little bit.
Yeah.
So it is, and the city, as I said, can only do so much. So it's really going to be up to the residents and the commercial sector in the city to get the next level. So
yeah, that's why, if you're not aware, our climate action plan is broken into those sectors and what each sector can do to reduce emissions. So okay, turning it over to some of the questions submitted by you all. First off, we have one from Miss Jane Carl, and she asks, when is Bowie going to move to letting its citizens have animals, temporary housing for animals, and perhaps staff who come to the citizens to help them with doing this, and or taking green areas of Bowie and having animals that are raised here? That's a really great question, but the short answer is that the city does not have its own zoning authority. So the way an area is zoned, for agriculture or whatever the different zonings are, is laid out by the county. So whether or not an area is zoned for that type of activity is up to them. And where I can lead you to is the county. They have a new zoning ordinance coming out April 1st. So you might want to check that out, follow up with them. There may or may not be areas where the zoning is overlaid and might begin to allow for maybe things like chickens or something that's allowed in other counties. But it's ultimately up to them, and I'm not really well versed in it. So that's the best guidance that I can give you. We then had a few water related questions from Miss Olivia Bell. She asks, what can we do as a Bowie community to better manage the streams and channels of reservoirs that are slowly eroding, causing the loss of trees and hills? And this is a great question. I gave it to our watershed manager, Tiffany Wright, and I'm going to read you the answer that she gave me because it's a little technical. Tiffany says, the volume and velocity of stormwater runoff causes the stream channel erosion we all see in our streams. To minimize these impacts, hard surfaces, which we call impervious cover, should be minimized and have stormwater treatment areas like ponds that you see in neighborhoods, stormwater ponds. About 40% of Bowie was built before the state required any stormwater treatment. So there are often significant issues in those areas, such as the Levitt neighborhoods and Huntington or Old Bowie. In newer areas, shopping centers and the road network are among the biggest contributors to volume and velocity. So large ponds are often required to prevent these problems, like the large ponds that you see behind Collington Plaza and the Gateway Shopping Center. So because Bowie is close to being built out, we need to go back into those original areas, Levitt and Old Bowie, and put stormwater management where it's inadequate or not yet provided. They're working on those projects, but each one takes years to plan and build, and
obviously costs money. She says, we just completed a stream restoration project between Rockledge and Saddlebrook West, and it was nearly $900,000. On a smaller scale, residents can reduce hard surfaces on their own properties, such as using permeable driveways and sidewalks. You can replace turf grass and consider installing a rain garden. So I will provide Tiffany's information in the follow-up email if you have further questions for her. And then she asked, is there a routine stream cleanup? Yes, every April we do a community-wide stream cleanup that Tiffany also hosts. This year it's going to be on April 2nd. The city provides all the tools and tells you where to go. Tiffany scopes out the different areas that really need to be cleaned up, and then she kind of assigns you to the different areas. So you can contact her again. Then, is there a local company involved in recycling plastics that we can support? So what I can tell you is, other than recycling at curbside, making sure that your plastics are looking for the numbers and making sure that they're 1, 2, 3, 5, or 7 and are clean, empty, and dry. You can utilize services at Mom's Organic Market. You can look up TerraCycle. You can return plastic bags to Harris Teeter, which has partnered with entities like Trex and the Bowie Lions Club to make benches out of the recycled bags. So that information is all on the Green Bowie webpage as well. Okay, one more from her. Where can we get trees that are native to Maryland to plant? The city actually offers a turnkey tree planting program, and it's called Plant One Tree on Us. You can also find that via the Green Bowie webpage. Basically, residents can choose a native tree from our list of acceptable species, and you choose where you want it to be planted. You work with Tiffany to hash out those details, and it's a really great program. It allows for 100 native tree plantings a year, and it is recently, I believe, just reopened. Takes a break in the winter, obviously, for the survival of the tree, as well as in the summer. But now that we're coming up on spring, it's reopened. So contact Tiffany if you're interested in getting a native tree through this program. And otherwise, the state has lists of native trees. They have a rebate on the state webpage, and you can always check out a local nursery. They typically turn to the native species. So, okay, here's our last few questions. This one is from Bob Calloway. And I'm going to let Steve take this one, but I'll read it. Bob Calloway is the chair of the energy subgroup of the Green Team. So Bob asks, NOAA recently published an analysis that estimates ocean levels along the East Coast to rise approximately 1 whole foot by 2050. What environmental, economic, lifestyle, transportation, etc. impacts will that create for Maryland and or the Bowie area?
Well, that's a lot of question there. I have to, there's probably a lot of answer, but I'll try to. Let me just backtrack on one issue real quick, and that is on the plastic recycling. Styrofoam is out. That's a number 4. However, there is a styrofoam collection site in Crofton. And,
yeah, good one.
Kind of behind that one of those little Crofton shopping centers on the left as you head up that way. And they take styrofoam and number 4 plastics as well. The city does that, maybe once or twice a year. The county does it from time to time. I've done that. But, storing those big blocks of stuff that you get electronics shipped in for a year, that's not a real friendly situation. So, but they can be collected at this site in Crofton, and the city. One of the things the Environmental Advisory Committee is exploring right now is ways that the city can collect those, and the same company that gets them at Crofton could perhaps get them at Bowie as well. So maybe having a central drop-off site for styrofoam here in the city is going to be a good program, I think, if we can make that come to pass. It's got to be cost effective. There is no free lunch, but nonetheless.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, exactly. Now back to Bob's set of questions. What's the bad news is essentially what he's asking. And, we looked at a little bit of that in my introduction, and that is that and I'm going to harken back to stormwater management as an example. As we know, as things warm, and it's not just sea level rise that's the issue, as things warm, we're going to have more and more severe storms, which means more rain all at once, which is the thing that is most impactful of erosion in streams and
Yep.
stormwater. So that's a big deal. So it's not just sea level rise that's the issue. It's everything that's going to be associated with that. Power outages are one of the things that comes along with that. Sea level rise is kind of a problem that is remote to Bowie, because most of Bowie proper is well above sea level. My house is at 148 feet above sea level, so I'm not worried about it flooding from that. It could possibly flood from streams that are overwhelmed, but it's not going to flood from sea level rise. However, everybody who lives in downtown Annapolis is going to want to move to Bowie at some point, because it's either that or put their houses on stilts. A foot of sea level rise may not seem like much. But that's not a foot. That's not the sea a foot closer to you. That's a lot of water closer to you.
Yeah, and moving in.
Just a matter of inches is such a big deal that now in Annapolis, the Inner Harbor in Annapolis, it floods frequently. Every time there's a high tide and a good blow off the coast, people are putting sandbags around their businesses down there.
That's something we talk about all the time, you and I, the millions of dollars spent on coastal management, the billions of dollars spent on home and building damage from the storms and from the sea level rise.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think about it, you're gonna pay the price. The resident is going to pay the price regardless. If we pay to try to mitigate sea level rise with riprap or seawalls or something like that, that's going to be a tax. That'll add to your tax base. If you can decide to take the action, if everybody took the action, wouldn't that be wonderful? Now, it probably won't be the case, and we're going to have to pay for some adaptation anyway, but I'd rather mitigate it by reducing greenhouse gases and paying a few cents more per kilowatt hour than I would paying many dollars more for the billions of dollars that it's going to cost to put a wall around the Naval Academy, which, by the way, is already in the process of exploring alternative sites.
Yeah.
So
there you go, Bob.
Yeah.
It's not good news.
And then Bob's last question, and we've talked about this before, but are there any potential large methane leak locations in the Bowie area? If so, is there a mechanism to have them checked periodically? So no, there's no point source in Bowie per se, but one thing I want to take a moment to discuss before shooting it over to you, Steve, if you have anything to add, is the leakage that comes from gas burning appliances like stovetops and gas water heaters. So as Steve informed me, it's something I hadn't been thinking about. The pilot light always stays on, and they actually leak methane when they're not being used. And recently researchers have found that it's to a much greater extent than they previously thought. So, just having that in the back of your mind is kind of crazy. So,
I certainly have been advising my friends and colleagues who are who liked the idea of cooking on a gas stove. And I admit that when I was a kid, I thought it was a great idea too, because you have better control. Not necessarily the case today. Modern electric stoves are and convection ovens are, that's a lot more efficient than they used to be. But nonetheless, that leakage, and there is some leakage, it turns out to be a lot more significant than might otherwise be anticipated. And the other element of that, of course, is the point source for methane gas. And methane, by the way, is much more powerful a greenhouse gas, although shorter lived.
yeah.
It's much more powerful in its effect in capturing heat as a greenhouse gas. So that's a big deal. If we could stop leaking methane all over the place, and most of that is industrial, but if we could stop leaking methane, it would have a big impact right away. Our big point source for methane is the Brown Station landfill. Landfills, as organic waste decomposes, it produces methane gas.
Yeah.
So that, methane just flows out of Brown Station, on a routine basis. You can't see it. You might be able to smell it, but there it is. And the only real way to reduce that is to reduce the amount of organic waste, which is another thing that we can do. We've got a pilot program in the city right now of collecting food scraps for composting. And however, it's worth noting that composting also reduces some methane gas. So reducing food waste is probably the right way to do that. And
definitely
on the large scale, reducing food waste, and maybe every once in a while have reduce the use of meats, which meat is the production of beef and so on. And it's not that cows burp so much. It's that the whole production process is a
extremely inefficient.
Yeah, exactly. So, even if you went to one meatless meal a week, you'd be doing a good thing. So I'm up to 2.
Okay. We're gonna do 3 questions here, Steve, because I know it's past 11, but I think we can answer the 3. The first one, I'm gonna shoot over to you because it has to do with your presentation. Maureen asked, and Maureen, you did ask a few, but I'm only gonna be able to ask this one, and you can follow up with us afterwards if you'd like. She says, when you use the Maryland Energy Choice, your supplier is not necessarily supplying energy to PJM, correct? Isn't it just an offset? Whereas if you use community solar, the supplier is delivering into a more local grid. And also, I will be right back.
Well, it depends on how you define the concept of offset. I mean, that is certainly the case with natural gas. That's all an offset issue. But with electrical supply, all the wind turbines and commercial solar facilities in New Jersey and West Virginia, for example, they do feed PJM. I mean, they feed not the PJM mix, if you will, but they feed that grid. So yeah, you are probably buying more renewable energy than might otherwise be the case. There probably are some offsets, because at the moment, if everybody in the city switched over to renewable, made a selection or an election of wind energy, there are not enough suppliers within the PJM system to provide that. So that would create a market, and the suppliers would respond to that market by building more to the degree that they can, but that would take some time. So in the meantime, so community solar is probably a good idea. Community solar means, building a solar facility, not on top of your house necessarily, but one that is that provides energy directly to houses within the community. So there are some differences, but for the most part, I would say that my bet is on utility scale, because community solar is great, but it doesn't necessarily reduce the amount of greenhouse gas that is extant in the PJM mix. It does on a rather small scale basis, but otherwise, I would think that utility scale, because what you want to do is get the big utility providers and distributors to switch over. That's what you need to do. So that's how you create the market for that. So,
were you just finishing Maureen's question, or did you move into Bob's? Because you muted. You accidentally muted.
I don't know Bob's.
Oh, okay. He said, can you purchase community solar via Maryland Energy Choice? And
I'm pretty sure the answer is no, right? You need to go to there because it's different.
I believe it's no. I
Yeah.
don't think that's right now. I don't think that's in the cards.
Yeah.
However, that's not that's not out of the realm of possibility in the future. So
Yeah. And, we like to promote any of these as solutions, but what Steve and I are talking about is the biggest bang for your buck and the biggest difference. So taking that grid, that's why I was saying that way up, looking at the whole grid of the United States and energy, our energy independence, even as a country. So, we need to look at making these larger scale changes if you're able to. That's where you can really enact the most change. But all of these other options are also great. It's not one size fits all, is basically the point. And then
I would go a step further and say, hey, rooftop solar is a great idea. Community solar is a great idea. And utility scale solar and wind is a great idea.
yeah.
So, they're all great ideas. Again, I'd say the biggest bang for the buck is the big effect, if you will, is to try to wean the BG&Es of the world off of coal and
Yes.
oil and natural gas.
Yeah.
And that's what we're attempting to do here. So.
Ingrid, I just wanted to, she asked, will they be monthly or quarterly? Thank you for joining us. They'll be monthly for the next few months. So the next one will actually be March 22nd, and that one will be with the stormwater manager, and she'll be going over stormwater and watershed management, trees, and how it all works together, and going over some of the programs offered here in Bowie. And then the last question I'm going to answer is from Tiffany, and it says, can you get rebates from BG&E on improvements that you make after an energy audit is done? And the answer is yes. We have some of that information on the webpage. So after you do get your free energy audit or your no cost energy audit through the city, and you have your menu of items, some of those things you can be rebated for, especially like Energy Star appliances and things like that. So you just have to check with the contractor that's doing your audit, check on, BG&E's website, look into those things. But yes, there are rebates.
Yeah, essentially BG&E is buying your old stuff when you do that. That's sort of kind of the way it works. So, if you get an energy efficient or an Energy Star refrigerator, and you're replacing an old refrigerator with that, then you get a rebate from BG&E for disposing of properly, and they know how to dispose of it, by the way. If you take a refrigerator down to Brown Station, they're going to pull out what they can that might be recyclable, but that's not the right way to do it by any means. Somebody who knows how to do that and can take them apart and make sure that whatever gas is in the system, in the refrigerator, make sure that's disposed of properly. That would be useful. So it's great to go through the utility.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing I just thought of. If you upgrade to a smart, oh my gosh, why can't I think of the word? Thermometer is not the right word. Thermostat. If you upgrade to a smart thermostat, that's also a really great small step that you can make. That usually the energy audit will recommend that, but it gauges what you're doing and can go into eco modes and switch for you. When if you're home, you might not have gone down and switched it, it'll switch for you. So it's really cool, and you get a rebate. So I just recently did that myself, and I love the one that I have. I love that it goes into eco mode and it knows when I need to be a little warmer and knows when to go down. So that's a really great option. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll send out a follow-up email to everyone with some resources, and you can also view this on the city YouTube page in a few days. Once it's posted, it'll be archived. So feel free to contact me at any time if you have further questions or you want to go over anything, and hopefully you will join us for the next one on March 22nd at 10 a.m.
And please let your friends and neighbors know that exists on the YouTube site or the city's website, because they can view this. There will be lists of resources available. So
spread the word.
Yeah, spread the word. We need your help marketing this.
Yes.
These ideas. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.